there's always one indisputable fact that silently lingers over a conversation about this film.
Is he attractive?
That it's a film about the Asian diaspora.
I think so. He's really masculine in this way that I think is so Korean.
And suddenly, because of that, it becomes a lot more difficult to talk about honestly. Director Celine Song takes audiences on an autobiographical journey for her first feature, as she builds distinct characters and relationships that ultimately end up with this moment.
Who do you think they are to each other?
I don't know.
Yeah, this is a hard one.
One that recreates this scene from her own life as a Korean woman translating between her Korean childhood sweetheart and her white American husband. It almost feels inevitable that it was inspired from true events because the concept is such a good one. Just from the trailer, you can tell why A24 picked up this film, because these images say a lot. There's something about observing an Asian woman navigating a love triangle between an Asian man and a white man that seems to get at some sacred core of our society that is typically very untouchable in conversation. But in other words, it perfectly scratches Hollywood's back in all the right places. In a time when the film industry has begun to observe the success of films about the Asian American diaspora, Past Lives checks all the right boxes for both diversity standards and box office success. So it doesn't really have to make things very complicated to unpack something interesting for American audiences. Is it a slow, nuanced depiction of the role race and culture play in romantic relationships, or is it a film that floats on the surface and never explores anything deeper in its characters? Any discussion of this question can make you feel like you're not just commenting on the film itself, but the topics of the film as well. Suddenly, assertions that you would make about Greta Lee's character Nora can feel like assertions about Korean women in general, or Asian American women at large, or even the Asian diaspora as a whole. And nobody wants to be that person whose statements become seen as overarching political opinions. And so that's what we've kind of ended up with. A film that has received sweeping positivity in the critical sphere of the film industry with little assurance from society at large of its genuine merit, because it's difficult to actually get into it. When you watch the film, there are clear moments where the separate opinions seem to diverge. In the beginning with the scenes from Nora's childhood, it's easy to point out a lack of substance. Where's the connection between the two kids even coming from? Why does this feel like the most generic childhood background story that you could create for this film? But then, you can also view it from the other side. Clearly they walk home together every single day and are both very studious and committed to their grades. This is something that they share. And it doesn't take a lot for kids to become close. I love this line from Nora's mother talking about how she's trying to build fond memories for Nora in Korea before they immigrate.
저희가 곧 이민을 가거든요. 그래서 가기 전에 좋은 기억 만들어주고 싶어서요.
I like how Celine Song plants this as a clue for why Nora is so fond of Haesung when they're older. Later, when Nora and Haesung begin their quasi-relationship over Skype, it can also feel kind of bland and opaque. They don't really talk about anything specific in great detail, and we also don't really come to learn anything concrete about their own lives or how they came to be the way that they are. And yet, this is kind of how long distance ends up being like. As someone who has unfortunately been stuck in many relationships that eventually become limited to existing over the phone, speaking to them is less of a demonstration of who you are as a person and more of a routine opportunity to unwind and disconnect from your physical body and existence within society. To be frank, it's a little sad, but also therapeutic and meditative. And I think Celine Song captures all of these elements pretty well. I want to point out how the film navigates this massive time jump in Nora's life. I think Greta Lee does a fantastic job of emulating the confidence of a young woman who has been able to finally embrace themselves. Her newfound maturity is not overly explicit, but her chosen career as a writer combined with her personality exemplifies how she expresses herself following what she must have overcome. When she sees Haesung again for the first time, look at the juxtaposition of behavior between the two of them. Married or not, she's not afraid to express her joy of seeing him again after years of learning to embrace her identity, this time with the act of literally embracing Haesung. She's not willing to hold back. She's not willing to hide herself. But look at him. Look at the way that he acts. She's not afraid to talk candidly with Haesung about his relationship, nor is she particularly concerned when she openly relays her thoughts about him to her husband. The strength and consistency of Nora's character is what I think ultimately wins me over in the face of criticism of the film's surface-level depiction of the Asian diaspora. I think the characterization and performance of Nora demonstrates the balance of assimilation and individuality, as well as an ongoing struggle to continually find that balance. As Haesung's stay continues and her interactions with him continue to involve Arthur as well, it's clear that her confidence and openness starts to wane. She shrivels a bit into something more closed and unsure. When Arthur pours out his inner soul to her, she has nothing to say.
What if you met somebody else at that residency?
That's not how life works.
Her years of progress have dwindled in the face of something much bigger, perhaps something she hasn't had to face for a while before seeing Hae-sung. Who is she? Did she make the right decisions in honoring who she truly is, specifically in regards to marrying and being with Arthur, a white American? Hae-sung and Arthur can feel this unrest in her as they too are tongue-tied when the three are all together. Each of them know what is at the forefront of Nora's mind, and also at the same time that it is taboo to try and sway her either way. What results is a symphony of politeness and subtext, of two men knowing exactly what they want to say, but being completely unable to speak on it. The surface levelness of these interactions is not a result of the performance or the story, but rather the intention. Not only does it demonstrate Nora's waning confidence in the face of the core question of her identity that has resurfaced, but it is also what would probably happen in real life if this scenario were to happen. Yes, nothing really happens, but nothing would happen. What I think is the most powerful thing about this film is how it comments on our adherence to the status quo, and how we as human beings eventually succumb to the story of what has been working, as opposed to the story of chasing something greater. And we must make do with the fact that the what-ifs will always linger beyond what we can control.
And Maria is C. Oppenheimer. Yes, Emma Thomas, Charles Roman.
Anatomy of a Fall.
When Past Lives lost both of its categories on the night of the Oscars, nobody seemed to bat an eye. It was never a favorite nor a snub. And that does continue to frustrate me. The indifference. Indifference to a film that should have caused disagreements because it is very nuanced in dealing with a subject that is rather complicated. While films like Barbie and Poor Things generate buzz and dispute, Past Lives feels like it is relegated to a simple but blatant status as one that lives in the shadows of last year's Asian American film. I could be wrong, but I think that until we learn to talk about films like Past Lives more critically and candidly, and accept that it is commentary on the film rather than the subject itself, incredibly important stories like it will remain good, but never great. Thank you for watching. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. If you don't, I'll probably be making more anyways.